listening to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast. My name is Farhan, also known as Gunner since '96. And as always, joining me here this evening is Adam Keys. Adam, are you ready?
I'm ready, Farhan.
So, first question. How important is rotation on a scale of 1 to 10?
8.
Is Arteta to blame for this defeat?
No.
And was the lackluster nature of our football down to heavy legs?
No. Okay.
Adam, how are you doing after our first defeat to the season in the Champions League, no less? Tell me how you're feeling. I mean, we're recording literally maybe 20 minutes after the full-time whistle's gone.
Frustrated more than anything. I think it's more one of those, the nature of the performance wasn't great. Whenever I'm thinking back now and taking my literally reactionary head off, I think it wasn't maybe as bad as I was thinking 20 minutes ago. Now that I'm thinking, because I'm thinking we were completely toothless, but actually when I'm looking at some of the chances we created very quickly after the game, we should have won that. They had 3 shots on target. We had 67% of the possession. And it was a game we should have wrapped up. It was sloppy moments cost us that. And I think Saka's injury has put a massive dent on it. To be honest, if it wasn't for Saka's injury, I would kind of be coming away being like, don't really care as long as we beat City, because we'll still probably win the group and we will go through. So it's I always struggle to connect with the Champions League at the group stage. I always did. I think it's no different to the Europa. People won't want to admit that, but it's just bang average for most of it. And like last week was great, or 2 weeks ago, real party atmosphere, welcome back, fantastic. But for the most part, that is what the Champions League's like at the group stages. A lot of the games are very boring. I talk to City fans, and a lot of them say this, that it doesn't really kick off for them until the group stage or the knockout rounds, because I think we have to remember just how much better the Premier League is to all the other leagues in Europe. So with the exception of the 2 big teams in Spain, there aren't many teams that are anywhere close to Premier League kind of top 6 level. And I think like Bayern are really struggling this year. The Italian teams, since Juve dropped off, I know obviously Inter got to the final last year, but it was a very easy run, and that Inter side aren't going to do well this year. So yeah, I think I'm frustrated at that, and I think Saka's injuries just put that worry into my head ahead of Sunday, as opposed to just being a bit down about getting beat.
Yeah, okay. You're not going to ask me how I feel? Or...
Yeah, well, you usually just launch straight into it. You usually don't need an invitation. You usually like full on, right? I'm going to tell you how I'm doing. So how are you doing? How are you doing, Farhan?
Look. Anytime we lose and we're about to record a pod, I'll have a 2-3 minute rant with my wife, and it'll be quite an explicit rant. So you can imagine, there are a number of explicit words that I use, and maybe a few irrational things that I say. And when I come on the pod, I'm really pumped and fueled, and I'm ready to just let it all out. But as soon as I press the record button, all of a sudden I'm in this really weird Zen mode. So I don't feel like losing my shit. I've done that on 2 occasions on the pod. I am going to try and approach this as rationally as possible with a level head. But that's going to be quite difficult for me to do, because I feel like everything I've said up until this point has happened. And, listen, Adam, I don't think any of us fans want to be right in the wrong scenario.
No.
We don't want our club to be in a situation that we've foreseen or that we've predicted. But when situations like this happen, it puts me in a bit of a hump. Is that the right word to say it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just a bit pissed off because this could have been avoided. We didn't need to go that strong. Bukayo Saka didn't need to play. Jesus didn't need to play. Rice didn't need to play. Odegaard didn't need to play. And you know what really upsets me
I
is
think
how
that might be a bit
much,
extreme.
But let me explain. Let me try and sort of expand on on that statement and argument. What really upsets me is how much we undermine our squad and how little credit we give to the guys on the bench ready to come on and give it their all. Nelson's good enough to play in that game. Emil Smith-Rowe's good enough to play in that game. Vieira's proved it. Kivior's, I don't know how much more Kivior can do to get game time in a game of this kind of magnitude. Ramsdale didn't put a foot wrong. And I guess the goalkeeping situation is a little bit unique and different and one that we need to give a bit more time before we can talk about. But Ramsdale didn't put a foot wrong against Brentford. We have a very good squad. We have players who are chomping at the bits, ready to play football and ready to give it their all. It's not a situation a few years back where we had players on the bench who couldn't be bothered, where they come on half-hearted, half-arsed it. We've got players who will put everything on the line. And unfortunately, this particular game where Arteta decided to play those 11 players, I think he got it wrong. And I think it's fair for us to point that criticism out because the game proved, or if there's one thing that I noticed from the game is that it was very laggy. It was very heavy-footed. There were a number of under-hit passes. Nothing really clicked in midfield. There wasn't much rotation in and around that final third. Everything was quite static. It did not connect. Whereas Lens, on the other hand, Lens, on the other hand, they were very much, there at the races, playing with passion, with fire. It's their first home game, right? I think it's the first home game of the Champions League group stages since when? 2001, something like that. And the atmosphere was beautiful. It was very fiery. It had all the passion needed. But those 11 players did not bring it. And I think one of the reasons why they didn't bring it is because they're not necessarily burnt out, but they're lacking that sharpness. They're lacking that fresh energy needed to arrive at a game like this. Where do you stand on that argument that I've just made? Because I think we're fans are very much in the two camps of 11 players. 11 strong players should always play in the Champions League, no matter what the situation is. Or we needed to be a little bit more careful with the way that we manage the rotation, especially since the next game is going to be against a City, who, by the way, are going to be without a few really key individuals. I don't think there's been a better time to play City than it is now. I mean, before this game. After this result, I think it's 50-50, especially with Bukayo Saka and the injury. We're yet to find out, obviously, the full extent of it. But yeah, try and give me some of your wise words of wisdom.
Well, Arteta has said Saka's injury doesn't look good.
Oh, dear.
So, the only thing is with Arteta, you can, I guess, never be fully sure, but him saying it doesn't look good. He did come back out in the second half, but he was wearing a tracksuit, he was walking, he didn't have ice on it. So, hopefully, it was more precautionary and it doesn't look good, just means he's able to play on Sunday. But in terms of rotation going into the game, I think saying Rice, Saka and Odegaard don't need to play is extreme. And for me, I got so many people arguing with me on Twitter today whenever I said about we needed to rotate better. And by rotate, I think people think that means changing out 11 players. I'm talking about rotating 3, maybe 4 at a push. So, and the fourth being maybe the goalkeeper. So I would have been looking at if Saka was a doubt, he has gone off injured in his last 2 games and was a doubt going into the game on Saturday. So look, if there was any possibility that he was injured, I wouldn't have started him. I think we need to really protect him. Then I said I would have started Tomiyasu, who he obviously did start, and I would have started Trossard. So in that sense, there's 2 players coming in. the one I would have brought off would have been Saka if he was potentially a doubt after those two knocks in two previous games. However, the one that I was talking about was Jorginho coming in for Rice, although I thought Rice was our best player by a country mile today, possibly William Saliba behind him. But if the reason I would have rested Rice for that game is just purely because he has been carrying an injury, but he looked fine. He looked like he was moving much better today. He didn't look overly tired in the game, and I think he's someone that is fine to play 2 games a week. Some players are built for it. Saka is definitely built for it, and he is incredibly durable. I think the point being is when you leave players on the pitch for those extra 15 minutes when games are won, like he could have been taken off after 70 at the weekend. Given that he was a doubt going into the game, why not just get him off the pitch after 70 minutes? Get him to put his feet up, enjoy the game, and see it out. Don't take that risk of a collision or whatever, twist or a pulled muscle, anything in the last part of the game. But I also agree with you on your point of undermining the squad in that we talk about trust in the team, and our fans are the worst for this, like absolute worst. You say about everyone trusts Reece Nelson and until you suggest playing him, and then it's disrespecting the opposition. Everyone trusts Kiwi or Tomiyasu, Smith Rowe. Everyone's begging for Smith Rowe to get on the pitch, but the minute you suggest rotation and him potentially starting a game, it's like, no, you play your best players. And I think this frustrates me so much with our fans, because when we talk about rotation, if you look at someone like Man City, who are phenomenal at rotation, Pep's tweaking 2 or 3 players. He's not tweaking the whole team. And it's certain areas where he's doing it. He tends to do it in the wide areas. He'll maybe do it with his 8s and the odd time with his fullbacks. But for the most part, the core of the team stays the same. You've always got Ederson, Ruben Diaz, Rodri, when he's fit, De Bruyne and Haaland. So those players are generally always in the team. And it's the players around them that rotate more. And that's what I want to see at Arsenal more as well, because Odegaard's someone that I think is more than capable of playing a couple of games a week. He doesn't take anywhere near as many kicks as Saka and so on. But for me, it's getting these players off with 10 minutes to go and making sure that our squad players are really sharp and hungry and believe that they have a chance to get in the team and not be thrown in whenever someone gets injured and we really need them to make an impact and their confidence is low, their match sharpness is low, and that's obviously going to bring negative impacts to the team. So that's where I stand on that right now. I think it's something that's extremely frustrating, and yeah, I'm hoping that Arteta's playing mind games with this injury ahead of Sunday, and that he is back, and it's not going to stop me worrying about it between now and Sunday, because I'm looking at that team, and Saka is the one player against a team like City that I don't think that we've really got someone else that can come in. So even Saliba, I'd be confident with Tomiyasu playing there. And whilst he's not Saliba, I would still trust him. Saka is the one player, and possibly Odegaard, that we don't have anyone like, because Fabio Vieira has got great final third ability, but he's not Martin Odegaard. He's got a long way to go to get to the other parts of the game. But Odegaard was very poor today.
Yeah, I made an argument last week, or on the last episode that we recorded, which, by the way, didn't make it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I want to apologize to the listeners who were probably kind of scratching their heads thinking, where is this podcast? We had a few technical problems. But the argument that I made was that this season is very much a season where we try and juggle as much of the psychology as possible. I think it's less to do with talent and ability, because we have bags of that. And we proved last season that we're capable of playing world-class football. So we don't need to worry in that department. What we need to worry about is managing the squad, giving players enough game time so that they're sharp, they're ready, and they're full of confidence. And number two, making sure that we are focusing on our trajectory. I find it quite hypocritical. Maybe hypocritical is the wrong word. I think it's naive of whether it's I don't know if it's Arteta who's having these kind of thought processes, but certainly within our fan bases, and maybe I'm guilty of this as well during moments of the season. But we should never be comparing ourselves to City ever, especially at this moment in time. We're going into a game where, let's be honest, no one is prepared for that game. No one is prepared to go into that game with 100% confidence knowing that they're going to beat City. Because they're one of the best teams in the world. They've just won a treble. And they've won countless Premier Leagues. Unfortunately for us, City have the mentality and they've wired themselves to operate as robots half of the time. Us, we're human beings with feelings, with brittle feelings as well, and momentum which goes up and down, very sporadic. Whereas City, on the other hand, are very much on autopilot. They can switch it on and off whenever they want. Now, in order for Arsenal to go into the City game and pose a credible threat, we need to be at our best. I understand City, when they rotate, they keep some of their key players. Remember, these players have gone through season after season of just real meticulous training, mindset as well, making sure that they are fully there at the races. They've been through the journey that we're going through now. They're 4 or 5 seasons ahead of us. Us, on the other hand, in order to have prepared for City the best possible way would have been to rest every single crucial player we needed 100% against City. Now, you made the point that maybe I was a little bit extreme with my example of saying so-and-so needed to be rested. Well, here's the counter argument that I pose to you. Players like Jorginho, Kivior, Nelson, Emil Smith-Rowe need to be playing games like this. Because what more are they supposed to do in order to... What's the next step in their kind of... on their journey? They've just pulled out some really good performances against Brentford. They were unfortunate not to get game time against Bournemouth, which I was quite surprised by. I thought they would. I mean, they obviously came off the bench, but their next step now is to start a game, an odd game here or two, just to try and stretch them a little bit. This was that game, in my opinion, especially considering the next game was City. Now, what happens, what goes wrong when we end up playing a really strong or a really convincing starting lineup? Well, going into that City game, they're not going to be as sharp as they might have been had we rested them. It's going to be a little bit demoralising having lost that game. We're yet to see how this crop of players is going to react to a defeat this season. And now we're going to be without Bukayo Saka. We could have given minutes to Mohamed Elneny and Thomas Partey, who could have been a little bit more, sharper, maybe a bit more fit, so that they can make those cameos if needed against City. I just think everything today, from A to Z, in terms of the management side of the game, I think it was a real disaster. And that's pretty much my rant done about the starting lineup. I don't know if there's anything you want to add or come back on before we actually talk about the game.
Yeah, no, I still think taking out 2 or 3, and I don't have too many concerns about the starting lineup. I think I would have liked to have seen 3 changes. He made 2. My only concern was obviously Saka going into the game with 2 knocks in a row. But ultimately, I'm not too bothered about that. And I do think, you can't make wholesale changes every game. You play as close to your strongest team as you can. My big thing isn't starting players. It's taking players off earlier when games are won and reducing the number of minutes overall. Look, players play football. They can handle it. They train. They manage their workload. Rotation is important, but you don't just like rest doesn't automatically mean that they'll be better. They're still building up match fitness at this point of the season and so on. So I think it is a case of it's being clever with how you rotate. And unfortunately today it didn't work for us, but hopefully I think it's all down to how Saka recovers, and we're not going to know that until Sunday because, look, if Saka's back on Sunday and we win that game, we'll have forgotten about this very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So it is a very tough one to say right now. Obviously, I think there's just the collective worry amongst Arsenal fans with what if Saka's out because we don't have anyone else like him, and that is a real worry right now. So yeah, as far as the lineup goes, I think that's we've probably said as much as we can say.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. So, and I think we'll probably come back. We'll dip back and in and out. Sorry, not back and forth. We'll dip in and out of that starting lineup conversation because the nature of the game is quite relevant to it. And I don't know if there was any real moment in the game, any large portions of the game um, where we were really good or where we were really dominant. I mean, I felt like the first opening 10 minutes was quite good. Um, the the atmosphere itself set the tone, didn't it, for not only just Lens but Arsenal as well. Arsenal needed to set the tempo and the pace quite early, whereas this season I feel like we're more used to seeing a steady build up of our tempo, but they needed to be, 100 miles an hour right off the bat. And I think we saw that really in the first 10 minutes. It was, yeah, there was a chance where, corner whipped in, not cleared. No, sorry, this was Lons. There was a long ball from Zinchenko into Saka, and you noticed that we were trying to feed the ball down the channels as quickly as possible. But that raucous atmosphere was giving that burst of energy, and unfortunately, we couldn't capitalize on that. Obviously, being the away end, how much does an atmosphere like that feed into the way that both teams start a game?
Yeah, I think it obviously gives the home team a lot of confidence, and some teams will be intimidated. But to be honest, I didn't think we were. So I think the first 10, um, it didn't start that different to how a lot of games have started this season for us. So I thought it was one of those, they had a lot of energy, they were working hard, you could tell they wanted to really get stuck in, win their duels, and that we could also see very early on that they were going to fall over if a gust of wind took them. So it was going to be one of those frustrating games where they were going to get protected from the ref in that sense, and it was going to be a game that they were really going to compete. But I didn't feel early on that in the first 10 especially that either side held possession overly well, but we were definitely the better of the two sides, regardless of whether we started with kind of our full like gusto or whatever. So I it was one of those that it was just a kind of cagey atmospheric start that you would expect from that kind of environment. But like I think with a team like ours, we can more than handle that kind of an atmosphere.
I did notice though in the opening 10 that they were winning their duels and they were winning their 50-50s, and it seemed like we not necessarily backing out of them but maybe not committing ourselves as much as we could have. um that's what I noticed anyway. It could have been the overall story of the game, if you want to look at it in numbers, was that Arsenal were holding the lion's share of possession, and we were being able to, I guess, um, control the way the ball was being moved. But in key areas where you had those 50-50s or those duels, we were losing those. And I think the goal will overshadow what was happening before that goal came.
So yeah, but I think first hand they had a couple of shots. They were causing trouble down the wide areas. They were coming at us with intensity. But in the lead up to the goal, we did have possession for a long time. It was one of those we we were feeling our way into the game, and whenever the goal came, I think we had about 4-5 minutes of possession at that point, and we had rode the storm of their early pressure. But with their early pressure, they weren't actually creating anything. So they had a couple of shots, but none of them that were going to trouble us. There was one that went wide very early on, and there was another cross into the box that Raya just plucked out of the air. So I think it was one of those, whilst they were coming at us, they weren't actually posing a massive threat. So yeah,
But it's a confidence building exercise for them more than anything, isn't it? And I think to some extent that's probably one of the most dangerous things you can allow an opposition to do is feel confident, feel like they can pose an attacking threat, and then eventually in the game where you've got your backs against the wall. And you're having to defend for your lives, which it seemed like it was the case, especially in the second half. Anyway,
what we were defending for our lives.
well, maybe not to that extent, but I did feel like Lens looked like the more likely side to pose a threat than us. I feel like we were quite static in the way the ball was being moved. We were struggling to get into a real rhythm, momentum. Whereas then, when they got the ball, it was, a flash. It was an instant. It was picking up the ball, making sure you play it forward, run it down the channels, try and get a ball into the box and attack it. It was very direct. Whereas us, it was feeling it around and trying to figure ourselves out.
Yeah, but they're a bang average side that play like a side, like a low block system, get it down, transitional football, and that kind of football's always played fast and will always pose more of a threat. Whereas there were times where we were sitting off them to try and get them to come at us and play, because clearly they're very good at playing with the pacey wingers and so on, getting the ball down the flanks, as you say, getting it into the box. And they were the areas we were struggling in. But for the most part, I think we were dealing with the threat. And as I said at the start, we had 67% of the ball today. That's a huge amount of possession. We played more than double the number of passes they did today. And all in all, it was one of those that you look at and you think, when you look at the chances we had compared to the chances they had, we should have won that game very, very easily. So, and that was with us playing very poorly. We weren't good today, but like Champions League football at the group stage isn't great to watch a lot of the time. It's slow, it's boring, it's normally met with a big atmosphere on grounds like that, where the fans make loads of noise, but a lot of it is sideways passing, slow movement, low blocks, trying to break teams down. And I think we're forgetting kind of what it was like back in the day when we were in the Champions League. For me, we're really glorifying the group stages of this competition. And actually, like, I've been watching City in it the last few years, and their games have been so boring to watch because teams play like this against them, and they do against other English teams. But even with passing today, they had 338 passes. We had 702, which shows just how many more passes we had. And it was very much that direct football down the lines, like a lot of hard running from them. And I felt it was more that in key moments we didn't take our chances, and then we switched off for both goals. And whenever they scored their first, that really changed the game completely, because we were looking very good when the first goal went in. We had a good period of play. Obviously, Saka gets the ball, loose ball, nice pass in, and it's just a super finish from Jesus, because it's one of them. He is under pressure. He's got two defenders in front of him. It's not a clear-cut chance whenever he gets the ball. He has to pick it up. He drives forward. He manages to get a bit of space, and he drives that ball right across the goal. No way the keeper can do anything about it. And that's one of those that you look at, and that's what we want to see more of from Jesus. So yeah, for me, one of those games where at that point we really needed to go on and get another goal and just really silence the crowd, and we didn't do it. But yeah, we were starting to look strong at that point and for the next 10 minutes after the goal.
Sorry, you kind of cut out a little bit at the end, but I think I got the message. Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. I think we were patient up until the point of the goal, and it took a mistake from Lens to get that goal. Capitalized really well from Sacco, who saw the misplaced pass, intercepted it, was sharp on his feet, plays it into Jesus. He's shimmying in and out, drops a shoulder, and the finish is beautiful. Really neatly put into the bottom corner of the net. And yeah, you could really see after that we were growing into the game, but also at the same time there were lots of dead possession with the odd long ball being played to try and break quickly. But I have to say there were some really outstanding performers, and names who we usually speak about. The usual suspects in Zinchenko, Rice, Odegaard. A lovely chance to make it 2-0 with Zinchenko playing a ball over the top for Havertz, and the shot unfortunately wasn't hit wasn't connected as well as he would have wanted. He did hit it with the side of his foot. I was quite surprised that he didn't put his laces through it. A bit too safe for me, but another really good chance for us to sort of maybe be 2 up by the half hour. And yeah, I mean, how do we end up conceding when we look like we're in control? Is it, and maybe we talk about this in a little bit more detail, or maybe it's a bit too early. I don't know. I don't want to. Maybe this is a time where I keep my thoughts to myself, but the key point in time where we lose the ball, which leads to the goal, was the David Raya pass, which was intercepted. That pass was obviously intended for Tomiyasu, and this is one of the issues I had for a large part of the game. So many under-hit passes. I don't remember another game where just passes weren't being able to were able to receive the other player, the recipient. It was either under-hit passes, or it was sloppy touches, or it was I felt like Trossard had a terrible game.
Yeah.
He grew into it a little bit, but he just wasn't there at the race. His first game back following an injury, just wasn't able to, get that first touch right. Often playing the ball out of the lines. So yeah, talk to me about the goal that we conceded, and how much we focus on that Raya pass.
Look, I think it's one of those. It was under hit from Raya. He's been very, very solid in goal for us, and I thought for the rest of the game he was very calm with his feet. Didn't have any issues for me, and it was just one of those. Like, these things happen when you play it from the back. An under hit pass can happen to any player. We've seen some superb players do this in the past. I've seen Alisson make mistakes. I've seen Ederson make mistakes. So it is what it is. But look, it starts with a poor pass that's under hit. And it was one of those at the time I was thinking, could Tomiyasu have reacted quicker to come to the ball? But actually it is just a poor pass. But then they deal with it very well. It is a handball though. It comes off his arm. It wasn't checked. And it's one of those, they brought it up in the studio at halftime and said it was a handball there. And but they do very well. It's a nice ball in. Um, the what's their centre forward called? Wahi, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
It does really well to control that ball. It's a lovely layoff, and like the finish itself is absolutely beautiful. That's one of
Sumptuous.
those.
Amazing.
It's
Yeah.
like Michael Owen summed it up very well when he said that you are usually tempted to hit a volley on your laces, but you generate a huge amount of power from the inside of your foot when you whip it like that. And
Hmm.
he controlled it perfectly. And I've seen people online saying Ramsdale saves that. I don't know if
Do
Ramsdale
you know
saves
what?
that. It
Adam, funnily enough, right, I wasn't on Twitter during the duration of the game,
were
but
you,
in the
were,
back
were
of
you
my head,
shouting?
no, I wasn't shouting anything, but in the back of my head, there was a small voice saying, "Do you know what? I reckon Ramsdale saves that because he built up his reputation at Arsenal for making saves like that." But you're probably right.
Yeah,
It was so well hit. It deserved really to go in the back of the net.
yeah. I think it's one of those. You can't say another keeper definitely saves that or doesn't save that because it's all down to the position of the keeper. I didn't think it's Raya is slightly further forward, and it's
Mm,
one of those you can like. Honestly, it's a stupid comparison because you don't know. Um, some of the things Raya does, Ramsdale doesn't do, and same the other way around. For me, the weird thing about this is, whilst I think Raya is very calm with his feet, I'm not noticing a significant step up with him in goal. I also
yeah.
not noticing a drop off. So maybe that will come with time when we're a bit better as a side. But because I still feel right now we are feeling our way into the season and kind of building up that form. But yeah, the goal itself, it was one of those. It's a mistake, and sometimes you then have to give the opposition credit. A bit like Gabriel Jesus and Saka did really well for ours the minute they made the mistake. Three players in that team respond, and it's a beautiful finish and one that like you can't fault it. Absolutely phenomenal finish and one that I would love
Yeah.
to see one of our players score. So yeah,
Can we
frustrating,
have
but you
a
have to give
can we
them
have a
credit.
chat about Can we have a chat about Raya and Ramsdale? I don't know, maybe it's too soon, but I I'm beginning to start. I'm beginning to feel quite uncomfortable with the way that the situation is being handled. Raya's put straight into the starting 11 without Ramsdale really doing anything majorly wrong. I mean, I understand that Arteta wanted Raya from the beginning, but I feel like the way that this is being portrayed is missing the actual story. Arteta says that he wants two top keepers. He wants to balance the game time. Ramsdale wasn't selected for Bournemouth, nor was he selected for this Champions League game against Lens, nor do I think he will be selected for the game against City. He's bought in for the cup game against Brentford. I think we can all see it now. I think he is the number two. But do you think possibly tonight he should have been bought in to just keep the boat a little bit more, level? Because it seems to. I feel like the pendulum has sunk a little bit to Raya's advantage, and I don't like that. It doesn't sit right with me because Ramsdale up until that point was. I mean, he's nominated for the equivalent of a Ballon d'Or for the goalkeepers. So, he's not doing half bad, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of look. I'm really not sure on this one. I think Leno was one of our best players for 2 years, and then he lost his place in the same way. Um, with
But we know
Ramsdale,
why he lost his place because he
yeah,
was
yeah,
unable to play on his feet.
yes, but the thing that does get me with Ramsdale, because I love Ramsdale and I do look at his positives, I do really praise him. I talk a lot about him on Twitter and the things that I really love about his game, and one of them being that I think he continues to improve and wants to learn and so on. But the one thing that does wind me up is when people say Ramsdale has done nothing wrong. Ramsdale's made quite a few mistakes, some of them quite high profile, like against Southampton. And
Hmm.
if you look at that mistake and compare it to Reyes today, they're night and day. And against United, he makes a mistake for the goal. His positioning's all wrong. White and Saliba have the side of the goal covered. He isn't. He should be doing better. He gets a hand to it, but he saves that if he's set properly. And Ramsdale has made plenty of mistakes. There's no getting away from that. But what I like about him is that he generally bounces back from his mistakes and learns from them. His positioning's got a lot better. His ability to collect from corners has got a lot better. The one thing that I think with Ramsdale is his passing has actually regressed a bit, and he was playing a lot of long balls out of, like literally putting them out of touch, and that was becoming extremely frustrating. Was Ramsdale's playing with his feet? So I think it's something he has made mistakes. So when we say he's done nothing wrong, he's done nothing majorly wrong, and he's still a top goalkeeper.
Yeah.
But if we're going to be as ruthless as fans as Arteta is, we have to look at those mistakes and look at them kind of honestly rather than looking at them because we like Ramsdale. Because I think Ramsdale's one of the personalities that really helped connect that team with the fans because he's so passionate, he's so honest, and he's so like kind of, he just wears his heart in his sleeve. And he's one of those players that really does seem to, he's affected when we lose. He loves it when we win. And he is an emotional character as well. So I think the emotions that we as fans have, we see it in players like Ramsdale and we really connect to them. But I think being completely honest, there have been mistakes in his game. For me, those mistakes weren't big enough to warrant bringing in another goalkeeper, but we've got one now. And I think we just have to get behind Raya. And to be honest, I don't really care which one of them plays as long as the one that plays does the best job for Arsenal. So as I've said before, we shouldn't be mollycoddling players. We should be backing the ones that are doing the best job, because the reality is we're not seeing Saka and so on. You're never questioning whether they're good enough. You know absolutely that Saka, Odegaard, Saliba, those players are all top drawer. So when it comes to Ramsdale, I think saying that he's done nothing wrong is, you wouldn't say that if he wasn't English. So, and
But does
like,
but
not,
does
not
the
you
game time
specifically,
need to
but
be
I
better
mean,
managed? Yeah.
I don't really care with keepers, to be honest. I thought Arteta's argument was bullshit. So it was when he said about rotating the two keepers, I thought that was just Arteta. I thought it was funny. I thought it was entertaining. I liked what he was saying in kind of in theory, but I never bought that he was going to rotate keepers that much. And I may be wrong, but that's just where I stand. I also don't think you need to rotate your keepers loads. Great having two keepers that are pushing each other and are at that standard, but I don't care enough about who plays versus who doesn't, as long as the best man for the job is on the pitch. So yeah, that's
Okay,
where I
but
stand on this.
surely this can't be healthy though. I mean, I can't remember another situation where a starting goalkeeper was dropped and then everything was hunky dory and the starting keeper was okay to be playing on the bench for the majority of it. Surely the minutes need to be managed a little bit better than this. Otherwise, we see a case where Ramsdale's unhappy. He's at Colney, walking around, shrugging his shoulder. Maybe he doesn't seem like the type of character to do that. But also, I should mention that it will be a real shame to lose someone like Ramsdale as well. So, I think as fans, we've kind of maybe accepted the fate that Raya will take number one. Whatever happens with Ramsdale happens to him. But I, on the other hand, I'm of the opinion that I want both of them to stay at Arsenal and to want to be at Arsenal. If the situation continues on like this, it doesn't seem to be ending, with both parties being happy.
They were never going to stay at Arsenal. One of them was always going to leave. So you're right. You don't have two top keepers that are willing to share playing time. Barcelona did it with Bravo and Ter Stegen years ago, and Bravo ultimately left. And Ter Stegen plays all the time, is one of their best players, and is someone that just kind of won that spot. Look, I hope Aaron Ramsdale's not happy about it. I hope he's furious about it, and I hope he puts that into training. And I don't think that means he's going to go around shrugging his shoulders and not putting the effort in and making it a doom and gloom atmosphere for others. I think he's someone that will want to win his place back. and I want to see him put that energy into fighting for it. So look, that's the kind of personality I think he has, and when he's under pressure, he tends to bounce back. So look, he could win that spot back from Raya, and it's down to him to do it. You have to remember, Arteta signed him with a lot of backlash, so he clearly believes in him. But I don't think us long term having those two is really an option because, as I say, just having two keepers of that quality that both want to play and are both kind of really raring to go. Raya wants to be Spain's number one. Ramsdale wants to be England's number one. Regardless of how good you are, you're not going to get that if you're splitting your time as a keeper with another player.
Okay. Saka goes down on the half-hour mark. Fabio Vieira comes on, another player who I felt like had a really, really awful game. Just didn't get into it. It's not his fault. He played out on the right. I think he's predominantly better played as a forward-facing 6 or, a bit of a reserved 8, whatever that position is.
No, he's an 10. So yeah. No,
I think he's more of a Havertz role, isn't he?
Yeah, he will. To be honest, he is a kind of left 8 or a 10, a right 8 or a 10. That's where he played at Porto, but Odegaard plays there, so he's not getting that spot. And Vieira's a player that you want as close to the box as you can get him because he's got such a good final ball. He's an agitator in and around the box. He's a disruptor. He's that kind of talent. And I felt he was this was the wrong game to play him on the right. If Ben White was on the pitch, he could have played fine on that role. Tomiyasu can't overlap. Whilst I'm confident with Tomiyasu at right back, as an option defensively, I think of the back line, despite him making his name as a right back at Arsenal, it's actually his weakest position. And when he moved to left back, he looked 10 times the player he did at right back. And as a centre back, he was fantastic against Brentford. So yeah, I felt the lack of support down the right was a big reason why Vieira really struggled. And we know what his weaknesses are, and not having that support and runner really hit him hard tonight.
Okay. So I mean, the remainder of that first half is very much a case of, I guess trying to get back into the game. Lens picked up some real momentum, really. He got into a good rhythm, trying to play quick counter-attacking football. At one point, Jesus looked fed up and frustrated with the way that the game was going, huffing and puffing and, not getting the decisions his way. And I think that epitomized the end of that first half. Just a little bit frustrating to not see the ball enough, to not have control. And I think that's the key theme, or the lack of it, in that first half, was not having control. But we almost, got a goal or a good opportunity right the end of that first half, an inviting cross coming in with Rice not being able to get clean contact, falls kindly to Jesus, and fortunately the shot is wildly hit over, as we're so used to seeing from Jesus. But that means... Yes, that sound can only mean one thing. We've arrived at the halfway point of the show, where I'll be taking you, Adam, straight back into the second part of the show. We really do need to fill this segment in with something.
I'll fill it in with a bit of somewhat good news. Gary Cotterill has said that the feeling around here, and not at all official, is that Saka may not be too bad, perhaps a muscle strain or maybe a precaution. So
let's all let out a collective sigh of relief.
So yeah,
oh my God.
I think it's one of those, we are just going to have to wait and see. Look, the fact that he came out in the second half with no ice on it, nothing, and look, we're not going to know until Sunday, but let's live in hope.
Adam, can I ask you a quick question about this?
Of course you can.
Do you know?
That's what I'm here for.
Do you? Absolutely, and we need your expertise on this, especially this question, because I'm a little bit confused. Do you know whether Arsenal receive extra points for starting Bukayo Saka consecutively? Is there a certain cut-off point where Arsenal are given 3 extra points for playing a player as many times as Bukayo Saka's
Oh,
played?
I think
I'm thinking
Arteta
maybe
believes
100
that.
appearances in a row.
Yeah, I think Arteta might believe
I,
that.
I, I can't seem to make sense of it, really. The kid's played 80 plus games in a row. Give him a rest.
He's played
Just
87
let him have a
consecutive
breather.
Premier League games. So
They're trying to get to 100, aren't they?
look. I think, as I said, he is built for this. He can do it. It's more minutes. I don't mind the number of games. I keep saying it's about minutes overall. And
Yeah.
I've said before, City played 12 more games than us, yet Haaland was the only attacking player at City that played more minutes than Saka. So it's a case of getting players off when games are won and managing their minutes overall. And that's how you keep players fit. It's how that you keep them rested and sharp and avoiding injuries. But look, I think we will get better at that as the season goes on. I hope we will anyway. So, but yeah, it's one of those we could talk all day about this, and the reality is we know very little about this. This is the kind of dark arts of football that the medical teams, the data scientists, and so on have all this info, but we work essentially on guesswork, and it's
Yeah.
like the reason I'm one of the few that have pushed the least for Saka to be rested because I do think he's built for it. I think he's able to manage that workload in the same way as Odegaard is, Gabriel, and so on. Declan Rice is exactly the same. But the eye test doesn't really lie that 2 years in a row he has dropped off at the end of the season. So that's my worry is you burn him out and we'd see the results at the end of the season rather than come November, December, January. So let's hope he's okay for Sunday. So I say that, but I want him straight back on the pitch on Sunday.
Yeah, well, I was going to make the same sort of argument as that you just did with using Raheem Sterling as an example. You know, he played 4, 5, 6 seasons on the top of the world. He was unstoppable at one point, and then he's only 20. Is he only 27 years old? I can't believe that he's only. Let's have a look. Raheem Sterling is 28 years old, and he's playing as if he's hit his mid-30s. So yeah, I think we need to better manage his game. I think you're right when you made the argument of minutes over actual games. And yeah, I'm of the opinion that a player playing in his position is more exposed to dangerous injuries or threatening injuries anyway. Like someone like Odegaard is less of a risk. He's playing in the middle of the pitch. His job is to create, whereas Saka needs to take men on, and oftentimes he's having to deal with two at a time. So and it's only a matter of time before someone really hacks at him and has forces a really bad injury. Anyway, God forbid. Let's talk about the second half. Arsenal go back into it, and I think I felt like they started the game off a lot better. An early chance from Arsenal, Jesus intercepting inside Lens' half. Havertz carries the ball, plays it into Trossard. Trossard cuts in really nicely, but the shot was a bit tame. And so it kind of set that second half up, I felt like, really nicely for us. But it doesn't take very long before Lens kind of forced their way back into the game. There were two really good chances before they scored. One of them coming from Lens with Abdul Samad. And it was probably their best chance of the game outside of the goal. I think he pokes a shot. It might have come from a corner. Pokes a shot, just goes wide, and then on the other side of the pitch, a corner from us falls into Tomiyasu. He couldn't have hit it any cleaner than he did, and it's an instinctive save by the keeper. So before we conceded the second goal, would you say that Arsenal were in the driver's seat? We looked like the likely side to score, or do you think it was a little bit more level?
I think it was kind of level. We had a lot more of the ball. Rice was playing very, very well. He was moving it quickly. He was winning it well. He was very much our best player and our real dominant
Yeah.
force in midfield. I thought he was our leader today. And as I say, Odegaard was poor today. But I just would have liked to have seen a lot more from Odegaard and get him taking charge in the way he usually does. But I felt it was Rice
But can you
doing that
blame
job.
Odegaard for that? Can I just quickly say, can you blame him for that? Because he needs Bukayo Saka and Ben White in order to create those lovely triangles and be able to get
Yeah,
the
I
best
mean,
out of them.
I
Because
think
Odegaard, he acts as a supporting act for those around him.
yes and no. He still scored 15 goals last season and none of them for penalties. So it's hard to say he was a supporting act when he scored more goals than any of those players. So he, he was dropping quite deep tonight, and Havertz was going quite advanced. Havertz I felt was very poor. Nothing just went
Yeah,
his way.
I
That
did want to
chance
have
you talked
I
about.
did want to have a word with him about him. I felt like he had
Yeah,
the poorest game probably.
yeah. I just didn't feel anything went his way tonight. That chance in the first half when Zinchenko played it over, the commentary team said that he connected well. I thought it was quite a limp effort that he directed at goal more than it's like, mate, put your laces through that. We've seen that goal he scored for Leverkusen a few years ago where he caught it beautifully. It's like when you look at Bruno Fernandes' strike against Burnley a couple of weeks ago, it was a much harder chance Bruno took, and I would like to have seen Havertz connect with that ball much more cleanly, because a bit like Bruno, you want to see him go across goal there and really generate power. Instead, he tried to side foot it at the near post, and I mean, he forced a save from the keeper, but like there wasn't a lot in it. But no, overall, I just felt I was frustrated by his performance. There were bits that I liked a lot. I just felt again he's really struggled to get into the game, and his defensive ability, things weren't always going as strongly as they have in the past for him in terms of winning duels and so on. Again, he had 19 passes. He completed most of his passes, so 17 of 19 passes, but only 33 touches in the game. And he played 70 minutes, which he won just two ground duels out of 8 and 1 out of 5 aerial duels and lost possession 7 times. So, and he also committed 3 fouls. So it was a night for me that I just thought, yeah, this really isn't your night. And I do want to see more from him. I've been very, very defensive of him. I think that he does a lot of good work for the team, but I just want to see that bit more. And I did kind of think after his goal on Saturday that we were going to see just a slightly different level from him today and maybe just a bit more confidence, but he just looked pretty flat again. So yeah, it was a frustrating one for me. And when he came off, I think it was very much the right time to get him off. And yeah, it is a bit of a worry, that one right now.
Yeah, he's. You know me, I'm a massive optimist. I want to see the best case scenario for all of our players, and I want them to perform at their best. But Havertz, and usually football works on feelings. I feel like we only need to watch a player for a few seconds to understand and come to a conclusion of whether that player is playing on confidence or not. And with someone like Havertz, I don't think there's been a single moment where I've watched him and there's been that bit of reassurance, or it's been far too safe. Today, most of his passes were backwards. Today, he didn't commit himself in the 50-50s. In fact, I made a note on the 52nd minute. Havertz pass forces a foul, which gives Lens a free kick in our half. And I urge you to go back and watch this. It was just so limp, I think would be the best word. You described it when
There was
you were talking about the
passes
shot.
like that I felt were limp. They were weak. They lacked conviction, and like I've used that term about Eddie Nketiah a few times when I've described his running, which is it lacked decisiveness, it lacked real conviction. And I felt the opposite about Nketiah on Saturday. However, with Havertz today, I felt a lot of his actions were indecisive, whether it was his defensive duels, his passing, or his runs. There was no kind of real, they lacked that gusto, that real kind of intent that you see from players full of confidence. And yeah, all these things were really frustrating to watch. And they were, yeah, it was just a really frustrating game from him overall.
Adam, what does that come down to though? Because this isn't a player who doesn't have the ability or skill. He cost £60 million. He's come from Chelsea, and he scored a goal in the Champions League final. All the facts and everything points at a player who should be playing with confidence. Does this come down to just purely on a lack of confidence?
I don't know. Look, I'm speculating completely, and I think we know confidence plays a massive role in sport. When people are full of confidence, they can go up a level. When players are down on confidence, everything seems to go wrong for them. However, I don't know what it'll take for Havertz to really turn this around. So I hoped getting that goal at the weekend would have done something for his confidence, but he's a player that I'm still trying to fully work out. And there's a lot I like about him, but there's a lot that I worry about. So in terms of whether it's just confidence right now, I honestly couldn't tell you. And I think that's saying that it's just confidence is, look, I think we would be massively speculating, because if it's confidence, then you would expect a vast improvement whenever it clicks. But look, Arteta seems to have a lot of faith in this guy. 67 million he paid for him. And it was a huge sum of money, especially when you look at Maddison going for 40. Szoboszlai went for 67 as well.
Yeah.
So there was other players available. Alexis McAllister went for a lot less than that, who can play that left 8 role, who are used to playing that left 8 role, and were kind of available for the same price or less. So that's ultimately what Havertz is going to be compared to right now. But look, I don't quite know what the turning point is for him. And I thought he was okay at the weekend. I thought he's been good in other games, but today just wasn't his day.
Okay. Let's talk about a goal that ultimately sealed our fate. Wahi puts the home side in front. Beautiful ball that's crossed into the box. I felt like Arsenal were just sucked into ball watching, really, instead of looking at the spaces, instead of closing down key areas. The defensive half with Saliba and Gabriel again caught ball watching. They have no idea that why he's standing behind him. Maybe they're anticipating a different kind of cross. I don't know. Slots it home. So yeah, what went wrong? What do you point? What do you? Who do you point at, or not necessarily who, but what do you point at for the sole reason for why we conceded?
I mean, they were very good at working their way down the flanks time after time during the game. We saw them trying to exploit the space left by Zinchenko. And it is one of those with Zinchenko. Look, he was excellent on the ball, and it was him and Rice that give us the control in terms of retaining possession. And it is always that trade-off. I felt Trossard was really poor down the left today. So kind of working back and giving Zinchenko that protection. There were times where he would come back and win the ball, and he would lose it very quickly afterwards. And he's been out a couple of weeks. It was his first game back. So that is always an issue. But they did very well. They got in behind that space. We know it's always a trade-off when you have your fullback inverting. But I never really see it as being much of a difference from whenever you've got a fullback that overlaps, in that if they're overlapping, there's a good chance they're at the other end of the pitch and they can be beaten by one long ball. If they are inverting, there's still a space left. The difference is it gives you a lot of like control in the middle of the park. It's an excellent ball in. Saliba's tracking his man. The ball goes behind him, and look, it's a good finish. It's one of those frustrating goal to concede, but there's. It's one of those I wouldn't pin to any kind of individual mistake. I think we were left too open. They caught us on the break at that point. They moved it well. Great ball, great finish. And I kind of felt like they deserved it whenever they scored it because I felt we were complacent. So as I've said about Rice being our best player, I felt he was one of the few that was really trying to drive us to a victory. And Gabriel Jesus, to be fair to him, was fighting up front for everything. But I felt that it was it felt like a Europa League pace. And it was the kind of goal that you concede when you're switched off. You're not fully, like, really fighting for everything. And it's one that I think they're going to learn a few lessons from. So hopefully that's what happens, because it was a very poor goal to concede, and the timing of it as well. I think the timing was pretty frustrating because it was 69 minutes it went in. And I was looking at it thinking, right, we still got 20 minutes to play here. And then suddenly 10 minutes passed without really much happening.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't feel that we had that quick reaction or anything that we needed to really get back into it. And they just fell into a low block again, and we're happy trying to see the game out.
Yeah, well, that was the most annoying thing for me, was that we conceded in the 69th minute. We've got 20 minutes to get back into the game. If we really wanted to, we could have, maybe somehow got an ugly win. Arteta decides to bring on Emile Smith-Rowe, Reece Nelson, and Ben White. Three really good changes to make. And, here's another reason why I'm really upset with the result, because the performance that someone like Emile Smith-Rowe put in, if you had maybe started him, ifs, buts, and maybes, but that performance from him showed me that he is ready to start a game like that. Came on, had a few opportunities, was in and around the ball. Nelson, fair enough, didn't have the best of touches, but again, he wanted to be involved. He wanted to be constantly around the ball. Yeah, he was dreadful. I'll be the first one to say that. He put the ball out on a good few occasions, not really, too effective down that right-hand side. But these are players who are not afraid to put themselves in the thick of it, Nketiah coming on as well, adding a bit of pace. And, ultimately didn't come to anything in the end. But, how do we summarize that final 20 minutes? What does it come down to? At any moment, did you feel like Arsenal were going to get back into the game and sneak a goal? Because I don't feel like I did.
Yeah, look, we had chances. So we had Trossard's chance when, is it Havertz plays it out to him, and he cuts back and hits it low with his right foot. It's one of those, I felt he needed to get a lot more power on that. And given Trossard's ball striking ability, I thought he would have done much better in that position. And then we also had Tomiyasu's from the corner, where he met it in his left foot. Again, it was a big save. Don't know how much the keeper knew about it, but it stopped on the line by the keeper. And if he directs that foot either side of the keeper, that's a goal. So there's two big chances that we had. And then towards the end of the game, there's the Reece Nelson one, where the ball comes in, and again, it's another, is it save or a block? But I think it's saved, and then it leads to a bit of a pinball in the box. But look, there's three big chances. Not to mention there was the chance, more of a half chance, that Jesus skied over the bar in the first half. There was the Havertz volley, and you're looking at that and adding into the goal that we scored. And if you compare that to the chances that they had, Raya didn't really have to make any saves today, and it's one of those, with the volume of possession we had, plus those chances, on another day, we take one of them at least and we put that game to bed. and we just need to be more ruthless up front. But we created those chances without being good today, and I think for me that shows that we're going to be fine. It wasn't a game that I think many Arsenal fans are going to be happy with. But look, I think we've gone away from home in the Champions League, first time in 7 years. I think Arteta did make some of the wrong decisions today, especially with bringing Vieira on when Tomiyasu was playing right back and so on. But we did create chances. We held a lot of the ball, and we went up against a team that very much go man to man. They press you, they hustle and harry, they compete for every ball, and they want to play on the counter. And they're a team that they only conceded 29 goals last season. They finished second in League One, but this year they've started really poorly. They have won their last two, and but they're a side that don't concede many goals and do play a deep counter-attacking game. So they're the kind of side that, look, we'll learn from this and we'll bounce back. But I'm definitely more positive, having quickly watched some of the key moments of the game before we hopped on here. It was more frustrated that we didn't go and win that game. Very frustrated with Saka's injury. And then ultimately I looked at it and thought, you know what, we had the chances. On another day we take them. I would be more worried had we have held the ball as long as we did and genuinely not created anything. Because I think sometimes when you lose a game and you have a lot of the ball, sometimes there's this perception that you haven't created, and actually it's not true. So I think today was one of those days where we had the chances, and there's been many a game where we've created less chances than we did tonight, and we've won it comfortably. So look, we have to learn from this, and I think that's very much the key, is getting back to the training ground. And look, going into the City game, getting a lesson like that and a reminder that we have to go out and fight for everything. We have to demand that level of performance, and that we're not going to be handed any victory might be a blessing for us. And hopefully it won't dent the confidence, and it will be a motivating factor rather than a demoralizing one.
Yeah. So, I mean, thank you for coming to that stage. I did want to, before we end the show, have a quick chat about that game, because I don't think we realize just how big of a game this is, just how big of an opportunity this is. We're 1 point behind City, and we know, of all fans, we know what happens when you're at the top of the league. Forget about City. But when Arsenal were top of that league, they wanted to stay there. They wanted to cling on to that tooth and nail. So I don't think that we can take this game and I don't think we are, but just, and you're right to say, this may be a blessing in disguise. It may, spur them on and get the best out of them. But there are a few things that I look at which is quite worrying, which is, regardless of how the Bukayo Saka situation goes, whether he's back for City or not, he's going to end up missing 1 or 2 training sessions. He's going to have to rebuild his, sharpness, maybe a little bit of confidence. I don't think Saka needs it personally, because he's a superstar and he's elite, but I would have preferred to have seen him not play and him be 100% sharp, fit and ready. So this game has leveled out a little bit for City. I mean, we had to see what will happen to them tomorrow. They travel to Germany, but who has the advantage going into this game? How do you think Arteta and the boys will feel going into this game against City? I mean, it's at home, so that's good. And I think we can safely say that a number of injured players will be back. Yet to see in what capacity they're involved in that game, but at least we know we have options. So first tell me how are you feeling going into the game, and then try and use your mystical powers to see whether you can predict how the boys are feeling.
Yeah, if Saka's fit, I'll be fine. Without Rodri, look, it's one of those, it all hinges on Saka's fitness. because, as I say, we don't have another player like Saka. And if he's fine and he's ready to play, I will be fairly confident because they don't have Rodri, they don't have De Bruyne. Um, Bernardo and John Stones have started training again, so they will be back for the game. And although I always expected the two of them to be back in time for it anyway. And look, as I say, if Saka's fit, Trossard is back now. He had a per game tonight, but it was his first game back, so I'm going to give him a pass there, and hopefully it just helps build that sharpness up. He looked like a player that wasn't sharp as opposed to a player that was having a bad game. His usually good touch was a bit loose tonight. He was kind of that bit late arriving to the ball at times, which again feeds into your first touch. You don't set off on time. You don't arrive on time. And those kind of fine details of the game just went against him and ultimately led to a fairly poor performance. But Thomas Partey is going to be back, and I thought Smith Rowe looked very good when he came on tonight. And what impressed me about Smith Rowe was not just his forward play, but his ability to track and work the line, and he won the ball back a few times. And look, he's someone I don't think I'll be throwing in against City. If Thomas Partey's fully fit, I would be going with a midfield of Rice, Partey and Odegaard. Really, really strong and physical against City. And without Rodri in there, that could cause them real problems. But the big thing for me is very much whether Saka's fit or not, because if he wasn't fit, it would be a game that I would be worried about, because right now we don't seem to have a huge amount of threat. And I think we're starting to notice, well, tonight we really noticed the impact of not having Martinelli in the team, because we lose that pace.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we finally arrived at the time where it's now
Good, bad, ugly.
It's now time for good, bad, ugly. So, unfortunately, we've lost the game. I didn't think I'd need to use that button, but we're here. So, Adam, can you give us your good moment of the game?
Good moment of the game, I guess. Jesus' goal. What's yours?
Yeah, Rice. I'll go for Declan Rice. His work rate, especially when Odegaard came off, you could really see him coming out of his shell. I mean, there was a moment where he had a real pop at Vieira, and it was nice to see. Rather than passing it side to side, you need to try and find those open spaces. So yeah, it was nice to see him kind of commanding that midfield. Give me your bad moment.
Raya's pass for the goal.
Okay.
What's yours?
My bad moment. Yeah, my bad moment of the game is. Ooh, I'll save that for the ugly, I think. My bad moment of the game. What should my bad moment of the game be? I know, the second goal. Horrendous defending. I wasn't as explicit as I wanted to be, but I just think everything about the goal was just terrible. We were too easily opened up, and credit to them, they played it really nicely, but we could have done a lot better. We could have positioned ourselves better. We could have maybe been a little bit more intelligent in the way that we were positioning ourselves, just leaving too many gaps. Didn't like that at all. So that's my bad moment of the game. And finally, your ugly moment of the game.
You know what it is. Saka's injury.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. We both thought of it, yeah. Saka's injury. I mean, if it ends up being a hoax, and can you imagine, right, if Arteta's plan all along, because he's the mastermind of mindset games. Can you imagine if he purposefully played Bukayo Saka to then ask him to sit his ass down on the half-hour mark, to then take him off to build this narrative? It'd be amazing psychology from Arteta if that's the case.
I doubt it happened, but there was a thought in my head.
Yeah.
The
Wouldn't put it past him.
yeah, no, I don't think Arteta would let him. So, but yeah,
Mm.
but no, we've got a long wait
Yeah.
until Sunday now.
Yeah, yeah. Thankfully, the game's on a Sunday, which means hopefully enough recovery time. Hopefully, sometimes digest what's happened and then just be back with a bang. Okay, good stuff. Well, it's that time of the show again where unfortunately we must say goodbye. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's listened up until this point. Thank you very, very much. If you did enjoy this episode, please do give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Let us know what you thought of the show by reaching out to us on Twitter. You can find us over there at Arsenal Therapy. You can also find Adam over there at AdamKeys_. And you can find myself over there at GunnerSince96. As always, we will be back for the big one on Sunday to give you your usual weekly dose of Arsenal Therapy. But if you can't wait until then, make sure to head over to the Arsenal Therapy YouTube channel for the Arsenal Therapy preview show, where we'll be taking a look at our furry little friends from Manchester in a lot more detail, trying to break them down and trying to predict how we win that game. Also, make sure to head over to the Arsenal Therapy website too for the blog posts, where we'll be breaking down all of our thoughts and feelings on this game and much, much more. So until then, take care, have yourselves a lovely week, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.